The phone vibrated across my desk, and the name Mom glowed on the screen. My stomach tightened instantly. I knew before I even picked up that whatever she wanted, it wouldn't be a choice. It never was. "Lily, cancel whatever silly plans you have tomorrow," she commanded the moment I answered. Not a greeting, not even a pause, just the familiar sting of orders wrapped in her clipped tone. "Sarah is hosting her networking group for Christmas Eve dinner. 25 guests, very important people, including executives from Pinnacle Corporation. You'll need to arrive by noon to start cooking. 7 main courses, 10 sides. The menu's already planned. Don't embarrass us." The line went dead before I could respond. That was her way. Throw the order, hang up, and assume I would obey. For a long moment, I just sat there, staring at the phone, the silence of my Manhattan apartment pressing in. My laptop screen glowed beside me, the irony almost too much to bear. An email from Victoria Chen, CEO of Pinnacle Hospitality, was still open. She was confirming our meeting for the day after Christmas, the meeting where I would finalize a contract worth $2 million. My company, Stellar Events, was about to step into a new league. And my mother had just ordered me to cook for the same woman, as if I were nothing more than unpaid help. I turned my gaze to the plane ticket resting beside the laptop. Flight 4447 to Fort Lauderdale. Departure 8 p.m. tomorrow. My fingers brushed the edge of the paper, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel shaky. I felt clear. But clarity came with ghosts. Memories hit me like cold waves, one after another. Every Thanksgiving since I was 17, me in the kitchen, sweating over roasting pans while Sarah sparkled in silk dresses and basked in admiration. Every Christmas, me, between jobs, as my parents introduced me, while Sarah was praised as the successful daughter in PR. At her engagement party, I had worked 14 straight hours preparing hors d'oeuvres for 200 people, while Sarah glowed in a $3,000 gown they bought her. When a guest asked what I did for work, my mother had actually laughed. "Lily doesn't have Sarah's social skills, but she cooks well." And last summer, the final wound. I came home to find my childhood bedroom stripped bare, my trophies and books shoved into boxes in the basement, the space converted into Sarah's overflow closet. The explanation was as cruel as it was simple. "Sarah needs the room, dear. She's building her career. Image matters in PR." Meanwhile, Sarah had been handed the entire third floor remodeled into her personal suite. One daughter was the investment, the other was disposable. I stood and crossed to my closet, pulling out the second suitcase I kept hidden. Inside was a leather folder, the name Stellar Events embossed in gold. My company, my empire. 5 years of relentless work, 50 employees across 3 thriving locations, contracts with luxury resorts and Fortune 500 companies. I had chosen the name deliberately, keeping Sullivan far away from it. My parents never asked, so I never told. To them, I was still the invisible daughter. To the world, I was something else entirely. I glanced back at my laptop, where another message from Forbes blinked in my inbox. They wanted to feature me in their 40/40 under 40 issue, celebrating the fact that I had built everything without family money or connections. A bitter smile curved my lips. Without family support. If only the world knew how accurate that really was. Then another email came through, this time from my mother. Subject urgent. Christmas Eve menu. I opened it and froze. 7 main courses, 10 sides, wine pairings, dessert selections, every garnish planned to the last sprig of rosemary. And at the bottom, written in bold, Victoria Chen, CEO, Pinnacle Hospitality. My chest went tight. Victoria Chen, the same woman who was flying to Florida to meet me to sign a contract that would change everything. The same woman my mother wanted me to serve like a maid. A text from Sarah followed almost immediately. "Mom says Victoria Chen will be there. She's huge in hospitality. I'm pitching her PR services. Don't embarrass me with your amateur cooking." Amateur cooking. I had catered Pinnacle's retreat for 500 people last month. Victoria's team had praised every detail. She'd insisted on meeting me in person. But Sarah didn't know. None of them knew. Because none of them had ever cared to ask. The phone rang again. "Mom," I answered, but this time my voice was firm. "I can't do it." Silence, then a sharp intake of breath. "What do you mean you can't? This is family. I have a business trip. I'm flying to Florida tonight." Her laugh was cruel. "What business could you possibly have? Don't be ridiculous. Sarah needs this. Family comes first. Family comes first, I said, my voice low and steady, when you need something from me. You're being dramatic. Cancel your flight. If you leave, don't bother coming back. For years, that threat had kept me chained. The fear of being cast out, the fear of losing even the scraps of belonging. But not anymore. Then I guess this is goodbye, I said and ended the call. My hands were trembling, but it wasn't fear anymore. It was freedom. Sarah's texts poured in almost instantly. Stop lying. You don't have a career. You cook sometimes. I'll pay you $200 if you just show up. $200. My personal chef day rate was $5,000. I almost laughed. Still, I scribbled down the numbers of 3 emergency catering companies and left the note on my kitchen counter alongside my business card. Lily Sullivan, CEO, Stellar Events. They would never come, never see it, but I left it anyway. A tiny mercy. By 6:30 the next evening, my Uber was waiting. I wheeled my bags out without looking back. As Manhattan's lights streaked past the car windows, I felt the weight falling from my shoulders. At JFK, the plane roared down the runway and lifted into the night. At 8:07 p.m., Connecticut vanished beneath me in a blur of cold, glittering lights. Somewhere down there, my mother was frantically dialing every restaurant in a 50-mile radius. Sarah was pacing, panicked, trying to salvage her party. Their guests would soon arrive to find empty counters and an untouched kitchen. But me? I opened my laptop, the Pinnacle contract glowing on the screen. Clause 15.3 burned like scripture. CEO presence required for all strategic planning sessions. My presence. My signature. My future. And for the first time in 15 years, I wasn't afraid of what came next. By the time the wheels of the plane lifted off the tarmac at JFK, my phone was already vibrating with the first wave of panic. I had silenced it, but the screen lit up relentlessly, a cascade of texts from Sarah exploding across the glass. 6:15 p.m., Mom's losing it. She says you're ruining everything. Just get here. 6:30 p.m., she's calling every restaurant. No one will take us. Do you understand what you've done? 6:45 p.m., Dad says Mom's about to have a breakdown. Please, please reconsider. I set the phone face down on the tray table and ordered a glass of wine from the flight attendant. Outside the window, the city melted into a sea of stars. I had spent my entire life caving under their pressure, shrinking to fit their narrative. Not tonight. At 7, another message buzzed through. Guests are arriving. Where are you? I imagined it clearly. The grand Connecticut estate lit like a jewel, wreaths and garland draped over marble banisters, the air sharp with winter frost. And the kitchen? Silent. Empty. My mother's proud fantasy crumbling with every tick of the clock. By 7:23, Sarah's words turned frantic. We're ordering pizza. Pizza, Lily? Do you even care? I smiled into my wine. For once, their disaster wasn't mine to fix. At 7:47, Mom's telling everyone you're unreliable. She says you've always been the family disappointment. Of course she did. That had been her refrain for 15 years. The line she rehearsed until it became gospel. At 8:15, the photo came through. Greasy cardboard boxes of Papa John's and Domino's stacked high on Waterford crystal. My mother's flushed face hovered in the corner, her expression a mix of fury and humiliation. For years, she'd bragged about her hosting skills. Tonight, she was serving pizza on fine china. And at 9:33, the final blow. Party's over. Everyone left early. Victoria Chen didn't even stay for dessert. Mom says you're dead to her. I set the phone aside and closed my eyes. Somewhere far below, the empire my parents had built on reputation was collapsing under the weight of its own arrogance. I should have felt guilt. Instead, I felt lighter than air. The next evening, I arrived at the Pinnacle Resort in Florida. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the Atlantic, where the waves rose and fell like a heartbeat. My suit was crisp, my portfolio ready. Tonight was the dinner that would precede the contract signing. Victoria Chen swept into the room 15 minutes late, elegance personified even with travel fatigue clinging to her features. She greeted me warmly, her handshake firm. Lily, my apologies. I've just come from the most bizarre Christmas Eve party in Connecticut. My pulse quickened, though I kept my face smooth. Oh, what happened? She shook her head with disbelief as she sat. You wouldn't believe it. The hostess, Margaret Sullivan actually, funny coincidence, had promised an extravagant meal prepared by her daughter. Instead, We arrived to absolute chaos. The kitchen was bare. She ended up ordering pizza. Pizza? I repeated softly, steadying my tone. On Waterford Crystal, no less, she said with a rueful laugh. And the entire time she kept bad-mouthing her absent daughter, called her unreliable, unstable, unemployable. It was the most unprofessional evening I've ever endured. I left after 20 minutes. Victoria pulled out her phone and slid it across the table. On the screen was a snapshot. My mother, red-faced, pizza boxes on the mahogany table, Sarah hovering nearby with desperation in her eyes. I studied it like an outsider, the way I had learned to do my entire life. That sounds awful, I murmured. I can't imagine treating family that way. Victoria sighed and closed her phone. No, you can't. But enough about disasters. I'd much rather discuss something more promising, stellar events. I've been eager for this meeting for a very long time. Her words settled over me like a crown I had waited my whole life to claim. The irony was delicious. My family's humiliation had paved the way for my triumph, and tomorrow morning, the world would finally learn who I really was. The morning of December 26th broke with sunlight spilling across the Florida coast, the ocean glittering like a field of diamonds beyond the boardroom windows. I stood at the head of the table, my presentation glowing on the screen behind me, the pinnacle contract waiting thick and weighty on polished wood. This was the moment I had built for in silence, the moment that justified every humiliation, every dismissal, every year of invisibility. I spoke with calm authority, guiding Victoria Chen and her team through projections, logistics, and vision. Every eye was fixed on me, pens scratching, heads nodding. For 30 minutes, I was no one's servant, no one's afterthought. I was a CEO commanding her empire. And then the door opened. Victoria's assistant hurried in, an iPad clutched in his hands. Miss Chen, you need to see this. It's trending on LinkedIn. A ripple of unease moved across the table as Victoria took the device. Her brows furrowed, then her face shifted from curiosity to shock. Slowly, she turned the screen toward me. Lily, she said carefully, this photo, from the Sullivan house in Connecticut, is this you? My breath caught for only a heartbeat. It was the Thanksgiving portrait that had hung on my parents' wall. Sarah in front, radiant and adored, my parents smiling proudly beside her. And me? Blurred in the background, barely visible, as though I didn't exist. Yes, I said, steady as steel. That's me. And Margaret Sullivan is your mother? Yes. The air thickened with silence. Victoria set the iPad down slowly. She told us last night her older daughter was unstable, unreliable, unemployable, that the whole disaster was your fault. I know, I said. But I wasn't there. I was here preparing for this meeting. I chose my business over being their servant. One of the executives leaned forward, incredulous. Your own mother doesn't know you run one of the most successful catering companies on the East Coast? She never asked, I replied. They all assumed I was a failure. It was easier for them that way. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Victoria began to laugh, not a polite chuckle, but sharp, incredulous laughter. Unbelievable. She spent the entire evening trashing her daughter, and that daughter is you, the CEO I've been chasing for years. The room cracked open with murmurs and astonished chuckles. Someone whistled low. Another muttered, That's poetic. And then the assistant burst in again, this time nearly breathless. Forbes just released their 40 Under 40 cover story. It goes live tonight. He tapped the iPad, projecting the screen onto the boardroom wall. There I was, captured in perfect clarity, confident, composed, the headline blazing across the image. From invisible to invaluable, how Lily Sullivan built a catering empire without a dollar of family money. The silence that followed was different now. Reverent, awed. Victoria rose to her feet, across the room and extended her hand. Miss Sullivan, she said, her eyes gleaming, I believe we have a contract to sign. The pen felt light in my hand as I swept my name across the page. Applause filled the boardroom. Champagne corks burst. The weight of 5 years, no, 15 years lifted from my shoulders. My phone buzzed violently in my pocket. Dozens of missed calls. Mom, Sarah, even Dad. Texts poured in like a flood. Mom, answer your phone now. Sarah, this has to be a joke. Please tell me this is a joke. Dad, your mother just fainted. What the hell is stellar events? Victoria glanced at the phone in my hand. Want me to do the honors? Before I could stop her, she raised her own phone and snapped a photo of me with the Pinnacle team. contract signed, and champagne glasses raised. Within seconds, she had posted it on LinkedIn. Thrilled to announce our partnership with Stellar Events and their brilliant CEO, Lily Sullivan. Proud to work with someone who built her empire from scratch. She tagged my company, she tagged Pinnacle, and she tagged Margaret Sullivan of Connecticut. The effect was immediate. My phone buzzed with congratulations from colleagues, industry leaders, even competitors. But in the middle of the storm came Sarah's call. Against my better judgment, I answered. Her voice was trembling. "You've been a CEO this whole time?" "For 5 years. Why didn't you tell us?" "You never asked," I said simply. "You assumed I was nothing, and you treated me like nothing." "Mom's falling apart," she cried. Everyone saw Victoria's post. She's calling people, begging them to believe it's all a misunderstanding. That's not my problem anymore. "How can you be so cold?" "I'm not cold," I told her, my voice calm, unshakable. "I'm finished. Finished being invisible until you need me. Finished being the family disappointment. Finished pretending I'm less than I am just so you can feel more." There was silence on the line. Then Sarah whispered, broken, "But we're family." "Family doesn't treat each other like servants," I said, and ended the call. When I returned to the boardroom, Victoria raised her glass to me. "To boundaries," she said. I lifted mine, and the crystal rang like music as they all joined in. For the first time in my life, I wasn't hidden in the shadows, waiting for scraps of acknowledgement. I was standing tall, seen and celebrated, my name inked on a contract that would echo across the industry. The daughter they called invisible was gone. I was Lily Sullivan, CEO of Stellar Events, and I was never going back.